Sir George, could you walk a bit faster? The king wished me to impress upon you that he wished to see you as quickly as possible.
I prefer not to arrive out of breath in His Majesty's chambers. I may need to make some rather long speeches.
His Majesty seemed most upset, almost angry.
I'm not surprised.
What is this about? You can tell me. I won't tell a soul.
You would tell 1,000 people before nightfall.
Nonsense. I don't know 1,000 people. Sir George, why is the king angry with you? You're the only person in government that has no enemies at all. You never spy, you never plot.
And I never gossip. You might take a lesson from that. Is His Majesty ready to see me?
We were told to admit you immediately, Sir George, but no others.
Sir George, tell me something.
When it's time for the rumour to spread, I will certainly tell you. Guards, see to it that our friend stays away from doors and keyholes for the next half hour. Your Majesty, you sent for me?
I thought you were my friend.
Your Majesty, I serve only God before I serve my king.
Then what is this letter?
My resignation as your Secretary of State, Your Majesty.
I refuse it as of this moment.
Then as of this moment, I resubmit it.
How can you tell me that you love my service when you want to resign from it?
Your Majesty, I resign because I am useless to you.
Useless? Sir George, you're the only man I can wholly rely on. All my foreign policy has been in your hands these past years, and you have served me faithfully. I need you.
Your Majesty, I resign because I have become a Catholic.
What did you do that for?
I'm not young. When I face my Maker, I want to have a good conscience.
I'm older than you are, and you don't see me converting.
You are head of the Church of England. It would be awkward.
Why now? Of all times. The Puritans are already raising sedition all over England. Now my Secretary of State becomes a Catholic. They'll riot in the streets. They already think I'm half Catholic myself. Now they'll be sure of it.
But your Secretary of State is not Catholic.
You've changed your mind about converting.
No, I've resigned as Secretary of State.
You had all this planned, didn't you?
I waited until matters with Spain had settled down.
Do you realize what this will do to your career?
End it, I imagine.
You could have been great, Sir George. There are men who get things done and men who have no enemies. But you're the only man I know who has accomplished both.
I'll have enemies now, I think.
Yes, me, for one. I persecute Catholics. Haven't you heard?
It breaks my heart to think of all the priests in prison here in England. The terrible fines that my fellow Catholics have to pay.
You'll have to pay them too, you know. I couldn't balance my accounts without those fines on Catholics. It wouldn't do any good to tax the Puritans. None of them have any money.
The Puritans denounce you every day, while your Catholic subjects have never rebelled, have never spoken against you.
They commit treason every day that they continue their allegiance to the Pope. God made me king. I didn't ask for it. I was only a baby when my father, the King of Scotland, died. And it wasn't my fault Queen Elizabeth never had a child and left England and Ireland to me. God meant me to be king, and I intend to be king. And that means that Catholics and Puritans are both my enemies. The Church of England is one of my strongest tools of government.
But do you believe that it's the true Church of Christ?
God made me head of the Church of England. What does it matter what I believe? Oh, George, you've ruined my whole day. I thought you were a practical man.
Do you accept my resignation?
Of course. I can't have a Catholic Secretary of State.
Then may I beg your Majesty for a favour?
Now you ask for favours.
Last year you gave me a royal patent to the lands I bought in Newfoundland. If your Majesty would be so kind as to confirm that patent, I would like to take my family and some colonists there to live.
I'll confirm the patent, but you may not leave. I want you here. You can serve in my privy council, at least. In the name of heaven, man, I need you. And if I should die, Charles will need you too. Catholic or not, you're the best man in my government, and I won't let you go.
I'll be a constant source of embarrassment to you.
The Puritans already hate me. They can hardly hate me more.
Don't underestimate the Puritans' capacity for hate.
Don't think I'll be lenient to the Papists for your sake. I have no intention of letting up on the fines. I need the money, and I don't want a bunch of priests running around loose, causing trouble.
Do they really cause trouble, Your Majesty?
In case you hadn't heard, the Pope has excommunicated me, placed England under the interdict, and has declared that it is not a sin for a good Catholic to murder me.
No one wants to murder you.
I can name 500 Puritans right now who'd dance in the streets if I died. The Pope would simply rescind those orders.
But that would amount to recognizing you as head of the Church in England.
I could get along so nicely with the Pope if he would just stop being so belligerent.
He could probably get along with you if you stopped hanging his priests.
I only hang them because they tell people it's all right to kill me.
I'm breaking the law, you know. I have a priest who says Mass for me. I can't take the oath of supremacy.
Yes, but are you still my friend?
With all my heart.
Then I'm your friend too. Oh, George, why do we all get so angry about religion? Why can't everyone just admit that I'm right and be done with it?
It would be simpler.
But unlikely.
True.
I won't live forever. I have to make sure you'll be safe after I'm dead. I'll make you a baron in Ireland. They like Catholics there, the swine.
You're too kind.
I know.
Do you want to make the announcement?
Oh, just tell what's his name, that obnoxious little baronet I sent to fetch you. He'll tell the whole court by nightfall.
King James proved his friendship by making George Calvert the first Lord Baltimore, much to the annoyance of the Puritans. And when King James died the next year, his son, King Charles, continued to rely on Lord Baltimore. George Calvert was a reliable man. His fellow Catholics depended on him as much as the king.
Why does His Majesty still tolerate these treasonous papists? These murderous Jesuits? These spies of the Spanish and the Frenchmen among us? Why is it that when he meets with the Privy Council, he allows an idol-worshipping, priest-loving papist to know the secrets of this kingdom? No wonder the war with France has gone so badly. The so-called Catholics are running both sides of it!
Right! Down with the papers! Christians only in the government! Now then, what's what you say about Lord Baltimore? Puritan swine!
Listen to him, Cecil!
Puritans haven't a brain in their head, Leonard. They're living proof that when a man forsakes God, he becomes an animal.
Animals or not, they're dangerous. What if somehow men like that ever came to power in England?
Then that would be a good time for Catholics like us to be very, very far away.
Any Catholic in the country is a spy and ought to be hanged, drawn, and quartered.
Listen to him calling for hangings. Did they like it when King James hanged those Puritan ministers?
That was 20 years ago. The Puritans are pretty cocky now.
They're so full of talk about how the poor Brownists had to go to New England because they were so persecuted. I'd like them to get a dose of real persecution and see what it feels like.
You can't expect anything else, Cecil. After all, there was never a Puritan armada sent to invade England. The Spaniards did us no favor when they made Catholicism the open enemy of Englishmen.
Well, Leonard, you're downright tolerant. Next thing you know, you'll be baptized a Puritan. Or do they still baptize?
One of the few things they still do in order to pretend to be Christian. Cecil, if we ever had the rule of law on our side, would we be as cruel to the Puritans as the Puritans are to our people?
No, we're Christians.
There was the Inquisition.
That was Spain. We're Englishmen.
Ah, here we are. Is anyone watching?
We're dressed like working men. What does it matter if we're seen?
Now, come now. You don't walk or talk like a working man, and neither do I. I'll wager half the people who get a good look at us know we're of a better class than that.
And a good many of them recognize your ugly face as belonging to the second son of Lord Baltimore.
Well, a look at your face, and they know that if you were really Lord Baltimore's eldest son, he'd drown you.
That's why I love you, Leonard. I learn respect from you.
Shall we go inside?
Good morning.
Good morning. We have word from Lord Baltimore for your guest.
What can I do for you? He's in the attic room today.
Your father told us he had some books to show us. May we go upstairs?
Go ahead. I think he's expecting you.
You're such a good actor, Cecil.
It all seems so silly, doesn't it, Leonard?
Except that Father White could very well die if we didn't do it.
Friends here.
Who are you?
Sons of a faithful man.
Whom do you pray to?
Adque Christo Domino benedicti Virgini et Angelis et annos.
Enough. Quiet. Come in. Stop speaking in Latin.
Why? No one can hear us up here.
I can hear you, and your Latin is unbearable.
I thought it was rather good, considering I never get to practice it.
We have word from Father. He's giving up on Newfoundland.
Huh?
It's too cold there. The summer's too short, and the soil is wretched.
If we had enough faith, God would bless the soil for the sake of the faithful.
Maybe God has other blessings in mind.
Father sent word. He wants me to come with him on another voyage.
I thought he was giving up.
He's giving up Newfoundland. But the king is very unhappy with the Virginia Company, and the Carolina Company has more land than it needs.
So Father and Lady Baltimore and Leonard and the youngest children are going to Virginia.
To see if a Catholic colony there would be feasible.
That's good land. Virginia is a good place, I've heard.
And warm.
Better than Newfoundland, anyway. If we can be sure we'll be safe from persecution there.
That was the one good thing about Newfoundland. No neighbors.
Father wants to see if the Virginians would be more tolerant neighbors than that nasty little Puritan colony in Plymouth. Shh.
Did someone follow us up?
Father White?
When the Puritans come, they won't knock. Who is there?
Mary Hilliard.
Come in, daughter.
Oh, you're not alone.
Don't be afraid. These men are Catholics, too.
Yes, of course. You understand, we can't go to Mass. Our neighbors never speak to us. We can't even greet fellow Catholics on the street. And you having to hide here, knowing that if I'm careless, it can cost you your life.
It's a blessing, really. The Lord has seen fit to test his children in England the way he tested the saints in Rome.
I'm not the stuff martyrs are made of. I just want to be able to take care of my children and live decently without having people spit at me in the street and...
They spat on Christ, too.
Oh, they're all heretics. And I hate them. I'm not filled with the spirit of love. I'm not worthy to be a martyr. I'm just a mother, and I don't know which I fear most. That after years of this suffering, my children will give up and abandon their faith. Or that they won't.
Daughter. Daughter. You may talk like a weak woman, but I know your heart. There's no one stronger in the faith than you and your husband and family.
Forgive me. Forgive what I said. I never want my children to give up. Never. Never.
I know that. You were forgiven before you spoke. You must understand. She and her husband once had a thriving farm, but in his mercy, King Charles commuted their fine to a mere 50% of everything they own, and 50% of everything they earn. There isn't much left.
That's why we have to go to America.
They say Lord Baltimore is trying to find a place for us there.
Oh, do they?
Oh, I pray to Saint Mary for him every day. If there's ever to be peace for us in this world of heretics, Lord Baltimore is the man who'll do it. It's my only hope for my children, that he can bring us to a place where they won't have to be ashamed.
Did you hear? Go and tell your father how their hopes all depend on him.
I will.
Are you the sons of...
Lord Baltimore, yes. I'm Leonard Calvert, and this is my brother Cecilius.
Oh, your blood is truly noble, then.
You may tell your family that Lord Baltimore is leaving soon for Virginia to find a place for us all.
Are you going with him?
I am. Cecil is the heir. He has to stay in England so that there's still a Catholic Lord Baltimore in case our ship doesn't reach the shore.
Oh, God will send you fair winds, sir. God will speed your ship and give you safe harbor. The prayers of every Christian Englishman will be with you. You travel for us all.
Slack off! Hey, nearly took the end off. Watch what you're doing. Come on, mates.
Look at that coastline. What do you think of it, Lady Baltimore?
Oh, it's a good land, Lord Baltimore.
Trees growing right to the water's edge. The land's so fertile that if you don't plough for a year, you have to clear the trees again.
Yes, the land was our enemy in Newfoundland, and the land looks friendlier here, but...
I know. But if the land is good enough, I think I can find my way around people.
With the help of your friends in England.
Yeah, that's the press of time against me. All my power to help the church depends on my friendship with kings. And what if there comes a king who is not my friend?
Fortunately, I think King Charles likes Cecil even better than he likes you.
Do you think so?
I'm sure of it.
The king shows good judgment. Cecil is the better of us two. Makes me rather proud, in fact. It's a poor father who can't raise sons better than himself.
George, you know that I love the children of your first wife as if they were my own.
You've been a true mother to them, my dear.
But much as I love Cecil, I must confess that I don't think he or any other man in England measures up to you.
Fortunately, I didn't marry you for your judgment of men.
My Lord Baltimore, I was told you wanted to see me.
Oh, yes, Captain, but only when it was convenient for you.
It's convenient now.
I wanted to ask you, are these lands inhabited?
By Indians only, my lord. The mouth of the James River is a good way north of here.
And north of the settlement at Jamestown, is the land as good as this?
Oh, the whole coast of Chesapeake Bay is a marvel of natural harbors and fertile soils. The east shore is a bit too low and coastal for big plantations, but the west shore is the best land I've seen for all sorts of farming. And I've seen a good many lands, my lord.
So the Virginia colony hasn't used up the good land yet?
They haven't settled it all. But of course the Virginia land grant includes all this land.
No, thank you, Captain. That's all I wanted to know.
We'll be harboring in the James River tonight, my lord.
That's good news. Thank you. Well, here we are, safe and sound in Virginia.
It looks quite prosperous.
It should. I poured a good many pounds into it during all my years as a member of the Virginia Company.
It doesn't look civilized.
It just looks new.
No, Newfoundland look new. This looks like where I would expect pirates to live.
Lord Baltimore,
We've been discovered.
Governor Pott and the council welcome you to Virginia and require your immediate attendance upon them.
Consult your memory, man. You forgot that Governor Pott requested my attendance at my earliest convenience.
I did?
I assure you that you did. Or do you forget that you are speaking to a baron and a member of His Majesty's Privy Council?
I beg pardon. You're quite right. I got the message wrong.
Tell Governor Pott that my party and I will be pleased to call upon him this afternoon after dinner.
But...
And if that isn't convenient, then tomorrow afternoon will do.
Yes, my lord.
The man talked to you as if he thought he were your equal.
Oh, my superior, Leonard. Well, I thought it was only in that brownist colony at Plymouth that they fancied themselves democratic. Apparently, democracy is a disease in this colony, too.
It was kind of you to respond so quickly to our invitation, Lord Baltimore.
If I had known your office was so luxurious, I would have come even sooner, Governor Pott.
I will come quickly to the point. We are honored to have a baron of your statue visit us. particularly because of your contributions to the success of this colony in times past. Since we are all loyal subject of His Majesty King Charles, I'm sure you are ready to take the oath of allegiance.
And supremacy.
I met with the king only days before my voyage, Governor, Captain Smythe. And he did not question my loyalty. He only wished me Godspeed.
The law is that we must demand this oath from anybody who claims to be an Englishman, to see if he really is.
Lord Baltimore is an Englishman, or my sword will teach you that he is.
Now, Leonard, don't offer to duel with a man whose birth and breeding are clearly not high enough to let his death bring you honor. Here, Governor Pott, I have the oath of allegiance that I swore in His Majesty's own presence.
We have the oath that the law requires.
I cannot swear to it.
You refuse?
You knew that I would, sir. I regard this as a deliberate provocation.
Regard it however you want. Let me make it plain. Virginia isn't a Puritan colony, but it isn't a papist either. And never will be. We don't want your priests nor your popes here.
Fortunately, I did not bring either. I regret that my wife and children and I will be unable to attend the official dinner you are holding in our honor.
But we weren't going to hold such a dinner.
Oh, forgive me. I was expecting you to treat me the way lords are treated by gentlemen. I forget that you are utterly unacquainted with courtesy. Come, Lady Baltimore. Leonard, now that we've visited the stables, let's find some lodgings.
Not even the Archbishop of Canterbury would dare treat you like that, Father.
It's plain we won't be welcome in Virginia.
I'll just start my own colony. Then all that Baltimore money will go somewhere else.
Where, Father?
Another colony beside the Chesapeake. I'll name it Maryland for the Blessed Virgin. And in that place, no one will ever ask a man to submit to that detestable oath, or do anything but honor him for refusing.
But what about the Virginia land grant?
Who gave them the grant? The king will simply ungrant it.
Lord Baltimore returned to England, so sure that he would be back within a year that he left his wife and many of his children behind. But King Charles refused to let him go back to Virginia. He needed him in England. So he wrote to his family, bidding them come home.
Maryland is not denied. It is merely postponed. But I can't bear to be apart from you any longer. Come home, my love, my little ones, and may God speed you. I'm not a whole man without you here.
His wife and the children she had with her boarded a ship, but they never reached him. All he ever got was the news that the ship had foundered in a storm, and they all were drowned.
I should have been with them.
Then I would only have lost you too, Leonard.
Father, isn't God with us?
Wasn't God with St. Peter, who was crucified? Maryland has its first martyrs, my son. And I have learned that I must pay a higher price for this colony than money. But I can bear it. There will be a Maryland.
Oh, it's too good. And he didn't even invite you to dinner.
I suppose he thought your majesty would be displeased if he ate with a Catholic.
He can eat with pigs for all I care. Well, George, my father told me, keep Lord Baltimore happy, and he will make you wise.
Your father overestimated my wisdom.
Did he? I long since reached my own conclusion. I think my father underestimated you. After all, you're the most prominent Catholic in a Protestant country, and still you have no enemies.
Except the governor of Virginia.
Oh, you'll have the laugh at him. I've looked over your charter, and I'm disposed to grant it.
Your Majesty is too kind.
Actually, I am. This sets you up with a virtual kingdom. You'll be able to rule your colony with more authority than I have in England. I envy you. No parliament to thwart you at every turn.
But, Your Majesty, since I am in all things governed by you, it is you who will govern my colony.
I notice you left blank the space for the name. I know you're a Catholic, and Catholics like to name their countries for saints, but the Puritans would never stand for it. So what name did you have in mind?
I most wanted to name it for your gracious Majesty. But the name Carolina has already been given to another province, and you gave your newborn son the same name as yourself, so I despaired of having a royal name for my colony. Therefore, I beg you to help me find a name to make our colony have as much nobility as Virginia and Carolina, which were named for monarchs of England.
You could always name it for Queen Mary, my wife. One colony called Carolina for me, and the other called Mariana for her.
Queen Mary, of course. And no one will think that you are in any way honoring the name of that Jesuit priest who wrote that kings should be deposed of if they ceased to be Christian.
I forgot about him. Well, then, in the language of scholars, Terra Maria.
And in English, Maryland.
Which is precisely what you wanted to call it in the first place. For St. Mary, I suppose.
You don't suppose anyone would think we were naming it for the Blessed Virgin?
Not when I tell them that I am naming the colony Maryland for my dear wife, and Henrietta Marie won't mind. She's Catholic too, after all. I'll have the grant of land written up, from the James River on the north to the border of Carolina on the south. Let the Virginia Company chew on that.
The Virginia Company chewed on it and didn't like it. They made such a complaint at having a new colony granted right across the James River on land that they thought of as theirs that it became troublesome. William Noy, the Attorney General, spoke to Lord Baltimore.
It would make things easier for us all if we could simply delay passing the charter under the Great Seal for a little while.
Whatever would be best for His Majesty. But there have been so many delays before. The last delay cost me my wife and many of my children.
It would only be for a little while. A few weeks. Maybe even a few months.
Of course. Of course.
You should do something about that cough.
I do. I cough frequently.
Good day to you, Lord Baltimore.
The delay, however brief it was meant to be, was too long for George Calvert. His illness took hold of him, and within a short time he was dead.
I'm going to his funeral, Father White.
It'll just provoke your neighbors, and Lord Baltimore won't mind if you stay home.
I care nothing for what my neighbors may say or do. Lord Baltimore was a great man. Several times when we could not pay our fine and might have lost our farm, I had only to mention it to friends, and we had relief. Lord Baltimore was the friend of all Christians.
Then why grieve for him? You know that he is surely caught up into eternal rest.
I'm grieving for us, for the Catholics who hoped so for his colony in America.
Then go home and dry your tears, Mistress Hilliard. Maryland will be settled next year.
But Lord Baltimore is dead.
George Calvert is dead, but Lord Baltimore is not.
His son.
Cecilius Calvert walks in the footsteps of his father.
I used to shoot the birds in this very garden, Cecilius.
Shoot them, Your Majesty.
Oh, it was quite forbidden. But I was 12 and determined to have my own way. I wasn't Prince of Wales then, you know. My brother Henry was. He was still alive. I thought I was going to remain Duke of York forever. The Prince of Wales does not shoot birds in the garden, but the Duke of York can have a bit of a lark if he wants. I don't shoot them anymore.
Who would stop you now, Your Majesty?
No one. But I don't want to kill them. As a boy, I didn't understand death. Now I'm rather afraid of it.
You're only 32, Your Majesty.
Death is not much impressed by ages. I've always been very sickly. I shall probably die young.
I pray that you will not.
Is it proper for a Catholic to pray for the head of the Church of England?
Is it improper for a man to love his king and pray for him?
The charter I would have granted your father, for Maryland. I'm granting it to you.
Your Majesty.
I made some improvements. For instance, Virginia is forbidden to trade with the Dutch. I'm permitting you that. It'll give you an advantage in the tobacco trade. And I'm not putting you across the James River from Virginia. That would only invite trouble. There's enough trouble in England without creating more in America. Your father suggested a possible alternate site to the north.
Yes, from the Potomac to the Delaware Bay. A much better choice.
Yes, I thought so. The charter also gives you the authority to build and maintain churches and chapels for the Church of England only. It's still quite illegal to build papist churches. Maryland is still part of the Church of England, however many popish traitors you may plan to ship there. Is that clear?
Yes, Your Majesty.
As long as you understand that I am not authorizing a Catholic colony, you can go ahead and tolerate as much dissent as you like. I have to laugh at the Puritans in Massachusetts Bay. They're already more rigid about religion than I am. How quickly the persecuted become persecutors.
I shall not.
No, you shan't. Because you and your father before you, you have true greatness of heart. I truly believe you are capable of loving a Puritan.
Perhaps that is too great a test of my charity.
Mine, too. I must admit that I detest them all. Your religion is repulsive to me, Lord Baltimore, but I certainly like you Catholics better than those Protestants. They're all Democrats and traitors and regicides at heart.
When may I have leave to go to America?
Never.
But, Your Majesty...
I've granted you your colony. You may send whomever you like, but you must remain here. I need you, man. I've lost your father's advice. I'm certainly not going to give up yours. No. Send your brother. What's his name?
Leonard.
Send him. I hear he has ability. Send him, but you stay here. England may someday catch on fire, and I'll need friends to help me quench the blaze.
So it was Leonard Calvert who was named governor of Maryland and prepared to sail with the first emigrants. There were two ships, the Ark and the Dove. Lord Baltimore chose the names.
These ships will bear us up above the Sea of Hate and carry us to where we can have peace at last.
How much has it all cost, Cecil?
It'll be about 40,000 pounds by the time you sail.
Have you any fortune left?
Enough. Let the colony prosper, and Lord Baltimore will be richer than ever before.
Yes, I forgot. We're doing all this for profit.
But our dividends will all be paid in the kingdom of heaven.
It's our little brother George.
Cecil, Leonard, Lord Cook is sending Edward Watkins out to stop us from sailing.
What?
We can't sail until we all take an oath of allegiance.
Not the oath of supremacy.
No, but it requires us to deny the Pope's teaching that Protestant kings can lawfully be killed.
Well, I can swear to that with a clear conscience.
But Father White can't.
Yes, and all this might just be a trick to catch us carrying priests aboard. Well, let's set sail.
They'll just send a faster ship after us to bring us back.
Then we'll come back, Leonard. But first we'll have disembarked Father White and any others who can't take such an oath on the Isle of Wight. And we'll pick them up again on the way out when Eddie Watkins has finished his inspection.
Father would be very proud of you, Cecil. That's almost clever.
Thank you, George.
All went according to plan. They set sail, a ship of the Royal Fleet brought them back, and everyone aboard took the oath.
That's 128 men who have taken the oath. Is there anyone else on this ship?
No, sir. There were some others, but they left the ship and went ashore when they learned this oath would be required.
They were very wise. This was no formality, Governor Calvert. We'll have no one in the American colonies who is not absolutely loyal to the king.
I only pray the king is as fortunate in England.
Yes. Well, good day.
They sailed then to the Isle of Wight, where Father White and some others who could not in good conscience take the oath got back aboard. But the ships did not leave harbor, and the emigrants began to be afraid.
Governor, I'm afraid this delay is no accident. Some of the passengers tell me that they've heard the sailors talking. They're waiting for a messenger from London. They mean to catch you with a priest aboard, and if they find me, it would mean the end of the whole expedition.
Why are they so set to stop us, Father White? They stone us and spit on us and our children. They want Catholicism eradicated from England. And yet, when we try to oblige them by leaving, they try to stop us.
If heretics were sensible, why would they be heretics, Mr. Hilliard?
Anyway, there are probably 1,000 rumors in the government. There always are. Someone is probably saying we're carrying a boatload of nuns.
We aren't even bringing our wives on this trip.
Or else they're afraid we're going to join a Spanish army in Florida.
And if they find me, their worst fears will be consumed. My presence on this boat endangers you all.
We're not sailing without you, Father, so put that thought out of your mind.
But what can we do?
Pray, Father. If the Lord wants good Catholics to have Mass in America, he'd better provide a way for us to leave here before the messenger from London can arrive.
I must confess, I hope the Lord has a miracle in mind, and not a martyrdom.
It was the miracle after all. That night a strong wind came up.
Captain, look! That French cutter!
She must have been riding too hard in this wind, and now she shipped anchor.
She's heading right for the Dove!
Dove! Dove! Look to port! Look to port!
Our ship anchor! They've cut the bloody line now.
They've cut the line.
Too late! The cutter's going to take them!
No, they're passing. The wind was enough.
What is it? Captain, what is it?
A near collision. The Dove barely escaped. But look, she's running on out to sea. Aye, she is. And she's cut her anchor line. With this wind, she'll be to Land's End before she can get a new anchor rigged.
What are you going to do, Captain?
Hold on to your britches, Governor. With this wind, we've got no choice but to follow, or we'll never find each other again. Weigh anchor! Put up the gallantsails!
We're sailing.
Yes, we're sailing. Now go below decks, Governor. You're not needed here.
God surely sent this wind to us tonight.
He also sent a French cutter to force us off. I'm half inclined to wonder if you made arrangements with him to do just that. Those frogs are all Catholics, after all.
I've learned, Captain, that the people who are most likely to suspect a plot are those who make little plots themselves.
Are you accusing me of plotting? To keep you here in port until the troops come from London?
Troops? What troops?
None at all. Not now, anyway. Get below, Governor. You'll get to America, and your priests, too, no doubt. At least they can't blame it on me.
So the Ark and the Dove sailed from England in November 1633, with nearly 200 Catholic men who had left their wives and families behind in order to make homes for them in a wilderness. Of all the Englishmen whose consciences brought them to America, these were the ones who had suffered the most, who were most hated and persecuted, who had the most to fear from their government. The Puritan settlers of New England had seen themselves as being like Moses, escaping from the bondage of Egypt. But the Catholic settlers of Maryland saw themselves as being like Noah, upheld by the hand of God to survive a Protestant flood that was destroying the world.
Does the weather look as foul to you as it does to me?
Worse. Look at the Dove, how she wallows in the water. She rolls twice for every movement of our ship.
What danger is there for them?
I'm no sailor, Father, but I know from past voyages that you don't want a storm here. We're still too near the coast of Ireland, where the rocks seem to reach out for ships, and no one knows the safe passages. A storm in these waters can be dangerous.
Ship is starboard!
Oh, look! Do you see it?
Only when the waves lift us.
It's the merchantman who passed us so swiftly yesterday. He's turning back to England.
Because of the storm?
If he's turning back, maybe our captain means to also.
Turn back to England? How can we? It would tempt fortune far too much.
The purpose of our voyage is not to make widows in England. Better to turn back than to drown. Now, where's the captain?
Captain! Captain!
What is it? What's wrong? I want to ask you a question. In the name of all that's holy, man, don't call out like that for a question. I thought we had a man overboard for sure. That merchantman, turning back to England. He's a wise man, that captain. Are we turning back? I'm not a wise man. Can we take a storm like this? Feel how the Ark is riding. She's such a beauty, Governor. It's my first time with this ship, but I'd stake my life on her being able to stay afloat in this storm. You are staking your life on it, and ours, too. What? Do you want to go back after all your trouble getting away in the first place? The Dove. What about her? Well, she's another matter. She might make it, and she might not. The seas will get much worse as the storm comes on.
Comes on? You mean this isn't the storm?
This? This is just a little wind. It isn't even raining yet.
The company is already getting sick.
They'll get a lot sicker before the week's out. Get used to it. And a word of advice. Get plenty of seawater below to wash up whenever they vomit. If you don't, the stink below decks can get so bad a sailor will retch in a calm sea just to smell it.
I'll see to it at once.
Mr. White is a priest, isn't he? A priest, Captain? Funny. I always thought the priests they were hanging were Italians and Spaniards. He sounds just like an Englishman. He's a Londoner, Captain. His family is as English as yours. Isn't that strange? Now, why would a true-born Englishman ever want to become a papist? You have it backward, Captain. 100 years ago, all Englishmen were Catholic. Why would a true-born Christian ever want to become a Protestant? Aye. You make it plain why they warn us, good Englishmen, never to argue with a Catholic. You twist things around till left seems right. Well, left and right rather depend on which way you're facing, Captain. We just happen to think we're facing front, that's all. Look, the Dove is coming alongside. They're going to give us a shout, I think. Ahoy! Dove, ahoy! Are you going on? Aye! So are we! It looks rough! If we're in danger, we'll show 2 lights at the masthead. 2 lights! 2 lights at the masthead.
2 lights for shipwreck! God speed you down!
Father, I'm going to die.
Of course you are. So does every living soul. But not tonight. Not for you.
Father.
I would have stopped with you, but it looked like you were praying, Mr. Hilliard.
To the Blessed Virgin. I was giving thanks that my family isn't with me now.
But my son, your family will make such a voyage. But such times as this when pleasure is scarce make the joy of safe arrival all the better.
Father White.
Here I am, George.
Leonard wanted me to tell you. The dove has just shown 2 lights, and then she went out of sight. We can't see her at all, and we can't go back to look for her.
Why is it, Mr. Snow? Why is it, Father?
My sons, a quarter hour ago the dove showed 2 lights at the masthead. That was her signal that she was bound for shipwreck. And immediately she went out of sight and hasn't been seen yet. Do you think God cannot find the souls of his true children if they lose their lives at sea? And yet it is no sin if we pray for them. Pray for them and their wives and children that they may be spared by the hand of God. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Bring us this day our daily bread.
In this storm they lost the dove, and in the next storm the ark's own mainsail was torn by the wind and caught by the sea, so that they feared that the ark would sink. But then the sea calmed and the wind blew fair. They sailed safely then to the West Indies, to the island of Barbados.
What was the shooting for?
Don't bother with that, your lordship. The slaves were only fixing to mutiny, that's all. Their plans was to kill us all, then seize the first ship that put into port. But one of them got to thinking that wasn't right, and he told, and we caught him out a few hours before it was to happen.
How long ago did this happen?
About 6 hours.
Then we are the first...
Oh, you're the first ship into port, all right. They would have put you all into the water and taken your ship if we hadn't caught him out. I say either the Lord God or the devil himself is looking out for you.
I assure you that it's the Lord God.
Your lordship.
Mr. White.
Father, have you had any of this pineapple, my son?
No, I haven't.
Your brother made me try it. Delicious.
Leonard, have you tried the pineapple? Here, have a bite of mine. I swear, if they don't have any of this in heaven, I'm not dying, and that's final.
Oh, it's very good. Have you heard the shooting, George?
Yes, they're putting down a slave revolt.
Do you realize how narrowly we escaped?
Why do you sound surprised? Haven't you realized by now that God is not going to let anything interfere with our voyage?
The warm January days in the Caribbean were good, and then came a day that was perfect.
Ship!
Governor, do you see it?
Yes, it's a fair little ship.
You landsmen might as well be blind. It's the dove. She didn't sink. She's caught up with us.
The dove! The dove!
Hail Mary, Mother of God. The Lord is with you. Blessed art thou, Mary.
They sailed north, visiting briefly in Virginia, where they had a kinder reception than the first Lord Baltimore had had.
This was the last place that we saw Mother alive, and the little ones.
Then they left the James River, sailing north to the lands that they would cultivate. They first put to shore in the land that would be known as Maryland, on an island which they named for St. Clement.
Have you ever seen a more beautiful land than this? Let us never forget who brought us here and why. Let there never be one of us who hates another man for his religion or tries to force another man's conscience. In this land, our families will be free to love God. We won't stay long at this island, but I couldn't bear to wait any longer. Father White, on this day when the angel spoke to the Holy Virgin, here in the open air, as loud as you can, for all the world to hear us and see us, Father White, would you celebrate the Mass?
That was why I came.